Agutamayid, this is Gemara Zevachim Daf Chaf Ches, and we're holding on to Chav Zayin and Beis at the Mishnah. The Mishnah, continuing within the, I guess we could call it the theme of Machshavai Zarais, of different kavanais that could passel up a carbon, says the Mishnah, different avoidais that are relevant. Hasheichet as a zevach. So in shechs a carbon, lizroik damai bachot, with intent to do the shchita bachot, to do the shchita outside of the appropriate place where, no, one more time. You do the shchita to do the zrika in the wrong location. I mixas damai bachot, or with the intent to do some of the zrika in the wrong place. Lahakter emura bachotz, to burn the emurim in the wrong place. I mix as emurim bachotz. Lechol besare bachotz, I ksayis be besar bachotz, to eat it in the wrong place. Or lechol ksayis me ara alya bachotz. Possible in any of these cases. Machshavais shaloi bim kaimai. Machshavais, to eat the item in the wrong area. All passel up the carbon. But, says the Mishnah, in as much as it passes up the carbon, but ve'in boi karis. Continues the Mishnah, if the kavana is chutz l'zmanoi, if the kavana is to do the zrika at the wrong time, mix the tam l'machar, or lahak the mur l'machar, to burn the mur in the wrong time, mix the mur l'machar, lechel b'sar l'machar, zayis b'sar l'machar, oy lechel zayis m'aralya l'machar, then pegol v'chayavin alav kari. So really, in this Mishnah, we have the definition of what is pegol. We have the definition that pegol in the fullest form, which we know doesn't only passel, but also carries with it the chiyav karis, is when is a machshava that has the wrong zman. A machshava for the wrong makayim passels without karis. Machshava to eat, to do zrika, to do the aktara, shaloi bizmanoi, has karis. And that is the two halves of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Savrua, they thought, Ara Alya, which is the final case that we discussed in both sides of the Mishnah, which is eat part of the hide of the tail, the Ara Alya. So Savrua Ara Alya, says the Gemara as we turn over to Chav Chesam Aleph, Ke'alya Dami, that eating the hide of the Alya, is the same status as eating the Alya itself. But if that is true, says the Gemara, then something is shver. What shver? V'kamechashev me'achilas mizbeach la'adam. Says the Gemara, but wait. But then it comes out that the machshava at hand is one from the achilas mizbeach for what? Achilas adam. Where is the Ara Alya supposed to go? The Alya goes to the mizbeach. So if the machshava was to eat it shaloi bizmanoi, then what? That means it's being a machshava from achilas mizbeach to achilas adam. And the problem is, a machshava mechilas mizbeach lachilas adam shenat passel up the carbon. As we look at the top of Rashi, Rashi speaks out kal yadami. If I feel in aktara b'shami kevesh al yasa kreva nami or karav ki hechlin achila chashuv le basar lini mitzvah aktarase nami basar hu v'katani mas nisan. What did the Mishnah say? You're having a thought of it going from mizbeach la'adam. So why, ask the Gemara, does it passel up the carbon? Answers the Gemara, and we're actually going to see the makar to this din in the next daf and daf chavtas. Amar Shmuel, Hamani Rebbe Eliezer. Who is the Mishnah? Rebbe Eliezer. Tamar Machsim Achilas Adam, who said that it is considered a machshava, which by extension will passel up the carbon from achilas Adam. Mechilas Adam lachilas mizbeach. Detanan, as you learned in the Mishnah, Someone did a shchita to eat something that is not normally eaten, meaning with a machshava zara to eat something, as Rashi fills in the blanks in the third narrow line. What's the halacha? Kosher. So says the Gemara, according to Rav Elazar, when you have a machshava from the achilas mizbeach la'achilas adam, that is considered a machshava, which will pass up the carbon, and that's going to be the shita of our Mishnah. Explains the Gemara. 1 second. 10 lines down. The first one line is Paisel. But you keep the Rav Elazar, but Ima Seifa. What does the end of the Mishnah say? Zaklal. And again, in as much as it says Seifa, this is really the next Mishnah. The Mishnah on that, and it's going to be on Daf Chav Tesamid Beis. Says the Gemara, Zaklal, Zaklal. I apologize, a little line between myself and the page. Zaklal, says the Gemara, Kol HaSheichet v'Mekavel v'Madech v'Zayreik, did any of the Avodos, Lechol Davar Shedarko Lechol, Ulakti Davar Shedarko Lahaktir. So then, Davar Shedarko Lechol in, so the end of the Mishnah says explicitly that it's only something that's darkoi. So that is clearly what? Asyon lirabanon. Reisha Rabbi Eliezer. V'sefer Rabbanon. Says the Gemara, what's going on over here? You're telling me that the first half of the Mishnah, our Mishnah, by extension, the next Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer, that what? A machshava mechilas mizbeach lechilas adam is a machshava. But then the end of the Mishnah clearly goes with the Rabbanon. Amar le, Shmuel responds in, yes, indeed. The Mishnah is going with two different opinions, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Rav Huna Amar, a second teretz, Ara alya, lav ka'alya dami. A second way of explaining is that the whole kasha of the Gemara was predicated on the line that Ara alya, as we saw on the top of the summit, is what? Ka'alya dami. But if Ara alya is not ka'alya dami, then the whole kasha doesn't start. So Amar Rava, my time with Rav Huna, where does Rav Huna get this from? Explains Rava, says the pasuk chelboi ha'alya. It's fat, the alya, which implies that the alya, the tail itself, is burnt, but not v'loy ar ha'alya. Therefore, machshava about the ar alya is not a machshava of achilas mizbeach le'achilas adam at all. And the third teretz, Rav Chisda Amar Leilam ar alya kalya dami. V'acha b'mayas kinan ba'alya shel gidi. When the Mishnah said ar alya, wasn't talking about the alya of a sheep, it was talking about an aliyah of a goat, and the halacha of an aliyah of a goat is what? That it is not consumed by the mizbeach, but rather it is consumed by adam. So it's no such thing as a machshava of achilas mizbeach achilas adam, because it's not achilas mizbeach bechlal. So three different terutzim that we're just going to highlight over here. Says the Gemara, one is Omar Lei, was Shmuel's response, was that indeed the Mishnah follows both the sheet of the Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim. Then we have Rav Huna, and then we have Rav Chisda. And in classical sense, the kasha is three different truths, and there has to be a reason why each does not hold of the other. So says the Gemara, Kulu Kishmol Amri, why not? Reish of Lazav Sefer Rabban. They don't want to say that the Mishnah follows two different opinions. Why? Because our aliyah kalya dami, because they hold it is. Excuse me. Our aliyah kalya dami kamash malu. Rav Chisda my time loy amri. So why lamaisa don't they go with Rav Chisda? Rav Chisda said a very simple teretz, that when the Mishnah said our aliyah, it's talking about aliyah shel gidi. Says the Gemara, you know why? Maika mashmalan or aliyah ka'aliyah dami. Because the Mishnah is teaching us that our aliyah is like the aliyah. Tanina, meaning if that was the chiddush, the Mishnah wouldn't need to say that. We already know that. Tanina, Velu Sairaseim Kibisaron. The Mishnah learned that the Sairais, the hide is like their basar, are Shetachas Alya. Therefore, there'd be no reason for the Mishnah to have to teach that Chiddush necessarily. But so now the Kasha is, so what about Rav Chisda himself? Rav Chisda, it's the Rechosag that Techmin Alin in Tonma, Terachich Mitzdarif. Says Rav Chisda, no, if we didn't have our Mishnah, you would think it's only din in Toma. Why? Because when it's soft, it combines Klape conveying Toma. Aval Hacha, but Klape the din of the Machshava, the carbon. Ema Lemishcha, Lemashcha. The pasuk says it's Lemashcha, Ligedula for greatness. From there we learn out Kader Sham Lachem Eichlin. V'lo yavidi Malachim da achli achi. And Malachim don't normally eat this way, and therefore what? Because Malachim do not generally eat Ara Aliyah, I would think it does not have a din of the Aliyah. So Eim Allah. So Kamash Shalom says Rav Chisda, that is why the Mishnah would still be necessary to teach us this Chiddush, the Chiddush by the Gedi. So 3 terutzim, and why each does not hold of the other. Meisvei, ask the Gemara. First one online is that Shoichet as Oila Laktir Kazayis. Me'ar Shatei Aliyah Shadachs Aliyah Chutz L'Mekaymai. Says the Brisa, if someone did shchit of the Oila with a kavana to burn a Kazayis of the Ar, that's Tachas Aliyah Chutz L'Mekaymai. What's the halacha? Puzzle, vein by karetz. Chutz L'Zmanoi. If someone has a machshava to burn the carbon, chutz lizmanoi, pegulin v'chayavin alav karis. Elazar ben Yehuda ish avile ivlim oimer mishom Reb Yaakov. Chena Reb Shimon Yehuda ish kvar inkos oimer mishom Rabbi Shimon. These different Tanoim saying over. Echad ar beis hapras behema daka. Vechad ar roish shall igel harach vechad ar shadachas aliyot. Any of these cases of the hide, v'chol shemanu chachamim gabe toma, and anything that Chazal spelled out klabe toma velu seireseya and kibisaron, which is what lavi ar shall be saboishes, which comes to include the R of the Beis HaBoishes. Chutz l'mekaymai. If with any of these cases you have a kavana chutz l'mekaymai, then pasal vein by karis. Chutz l'zmanoi, pigol v'chayav alav karis. So says the Gemara. So what do we see? The Brisa said an oila. So from here we can make a diok. Says the Gemara, oila in aval zevach loi. Sounds like there's only a din by an oila. So bish lamel Rav Huna. Hainu diktani oila. El Rav Chisda, this isn't true. My diktani oila listi zevach. According to Rav Chisda, the exact same halach would apply by old karbonos. Am lecha Rav Chisda. Says Rav Chisda, you're right. And I'll tell you, so there's 2 terutzim. You had a kasha from our Mishnah. I told you the teretz to the kasha of our Mishnah is what? That's talking about the Arshel, the Gedi. If you're going to ask me that, they're going to tell me, this Brisa, and I'll change the Brisa to say Zevach. Or the Brisa's fine, and then the Mishnah could stay with Arshal Gedi. Either way, says Rav Chisda, we could answer up, and nothing is shver. Continues the Gemara, 3 lines from the wide line, quoting the Mishnah, the first half of the Mishnah. What was the din? The din was a machshava shaloi b'mekaymai. The halacha was puzzle, but vein by karis. Asks the Gemara, minahani mili, Amar Shmuel, trei krai ksivi. Says Shmuel, there are 2 psukim listed klape machshava. One is shlei bizmanai, one is shlei b'mekaymai. Says Gemara, Maihi, one of these psukim, Amar Rabba, says Rabba. One pasuk says shlishi, zelchos bizmanai. Pegol, the pasuk says it's pegol, zelchos b'mekaymai. And the pasuk says, and so eats it echad v'lo shnayim. The pasuk says nefesh oicheles mimenu, and the singular means one and not two, meaning only one of them has the din of kares. So the psukim are clear that only one has kares. So the Gemara is explaining which one, the one of chutz zmanoi. Ay, v'ima nefesh ochels mimenu zeh chutz l'mekoymai v'lemeute chutz l'zmanoi. How do you know which? U'mistavra chutz l'zmanoi odif de pasach bei. So you tell me no, chutz l'zmanoi makes sense. Why? Because the pasuk starts with it, which shows us that it's a stronger avera, and that's the reason why there would be kares. Says the Gemara, no, throw back at you. The third way, madrabo. Chutz l'mekoymai odif. Why? To samachlei. Chutz l'mekoymai is more chomer. Why? Because it says it closer to the kares in the pasuk. Elam Rav Abaye says the Abaye Kasar of Yitzchak Dimi Amarav Samich. You know where the Mishnah learned it from? Aditani Tana. He relied upon the following brisa. Kishuay Mer Shlishi Parshas Kedoshim Tiyu. When it says Shlishi in the parsha of Kedoshim Tiyu, Shein Tamalaymer didn't have to say Shlishi there. Shlishi already knew that. So why does it say Shlishi again in Kedoshim? As we turn over to Chav Chesim Beis, if we don't need it to teach us anything about Chutz Lizmanai, today we need Chutz L'Mekaymai, Umiyad Rachmana, Tini Chutz L'Mekaymai, and from that's how we're going to see the Chilik to Chutz Lizmanai and Chutz L'Mekaymai, that by Kedoshim, it's going to be Chutz L'Mekaymai, it's not talking about Kares, and therefore Chutz Lizmanai will yes have Kares. Says Gemara, 1 second. But the next pasuk says, Amiyot klabe noiser, vaychalav avoynoi yisa. The one who eats it will carry its avir lemute chutz lemekaymai. That seems to say that chutz lemekaymai is excluded, meaning that maybe it should yes have karis. Says Gemara, no. Vema vaychlav avoynoi yisa izeu chutz lemekaymai. How do you know which one is coming to exclude? So Mistavra Noiser Havale Lokli Bekares. Well, the Migmar Avoin Lochutz Lizmanoi Dedamile. So Noiser is going to have kares similar to Chutz Lizmanoi. Why? Dedamile Bezayin Beis. Because it's similar to it in Zayin Beis. Beis is Bama. The Zayin is the Zman. Rashi over here spells this out. And therefore, there's two ways that Noiser is similar to Chutz Lizmanoi. Says the Gemara, but wait, Adrab, Chutz L'Mekaymai, Avale Look Me Bekares, L'Gemara Avon Avon Chutz Lizmanoi, Damile Be, Mem, Kof, Dalid Shin. It's similar to it in four ways. Machshava, Ktsas, Dam, and Shlishi. Four ways that it's similar. So Elam Rav Yechlan, you're right. Tini Zavdi Bar Levi. Zavdi Bar Levi taught, we're 10 lines down. The first one is Tani, Asya Kodesh Kodesh. Ksev Achaz Kodesh Hashem Chila v'Nichrasa. Ksev Asam Tzraf Tisanay for Beish v'Goymer. Malahala Noiser, Afkan Noiser. Umiyah Rachmani Gabi Noiser v'Acholav Avoynov Yisa. Says the Gemara. Excuse me, and therefore the miyat is by Noiser. The Mutei Chutz L'Mekaymai Mikaris. So because of the Gzera Shava of Kodesh, that's how we're going to know that Noiser will yes have karis. Therefore, the pasuk is clearly excluding Chutz L'Mekaymai. Ask the Gemara, Ma Chazis Tekra Aricha B'Chutz Lizmanoi. How do you know that the long pasuk is referring to Chutz Lizmanoi? Usually, the Parshas Kedoshim Tiu B'Chutz L'Mekaymai Epoch. Maybe we should switch Epachana, we switch it around, which I'm sure is really what bothered everyone in the first place. It's because there was a Hanacha that the Gemara made. The Gemara made that one is talking about Chutz Zman, and the other one is talking about Chutz L'Mekaymai. So now, after circling around and finally figuring out where we learned it out from, the Gemara says, how do you know that Hanacha? So responds the Gemara, Mistavra Aricha, Chutz L'Zman, the Gemara Avon Minaiser, the Damile, B'Zayin Beis. Says the Gemara the same kasha. Adrab Aricha b'Chutz L'Mekaymai Shlishi D'Kedeshim Tiyu b'Chutz Lizmanoi Mishad D'Damalei, because it is similar to it. Samchei v'Kamamim Tzilei, and therefore says the Gemara, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we don't know why the very basic din of Pegel only applies to chutz lizmanoi in the full form, that there will be both a paslos and a kares, and now by chutz lemekaimai, the Gemara cannot figure out the makar. So rather, Ella Amar Rava, 10 lines from the bottom, the first line is V'kamamti lei. Rava comes along with a new makar. Kolu mikra richa asyon. Says Rav, we learn a lot from the pasuk. The save ha'oichel yi'ochel b'shtei achilas ha'kosav v'daber echad achilas adam el achilas mizvech mibas zevach shlamav. The pasuk continues. That teaches what? Mashlamim mifalglin u'mispaglin afkom mifalglin u'mispaglin shlishi zeu chutz lizmanoi lo yiratze kartois kosher kin artois pasul ma artois kosher. Just like in the case of the which is accepted, which is kosher, is what? Add 4 lines from the bottom. Shekriva kol matirov. It's only until everything is brought. Avartzar's pasul at shekriva kol matirov. Hamakriv. Va'akravo hu nifsal. Veino nifsal bishlishi. Oisai baze oisai. Continues the pasuk. Bezevach hakosu medaber. Ve'enai medaber be'koyin. Lo yichoshev. Continues the pasuk. As we turn over to Chavtes and Aleph, the Gemara continues darshaning this pasuk aricha. Lo yarivoy machshavos acheros. Other machshavos are not going to mess you up. Pegol zeh chutz lemekaimai. Yeh malami shem sarfin zem zeh. V'nefesh ha'chelas mimenu echad v'lo shnayim. Beizeh zeh chutz lezmanoi. The Gemara avoid by minaiser to dami lei b'zayin beis. So the Gemara proves from this pasuk, the longer pasuk in Parashat Saf, the Gemara goes through piece by piece, proving that chutz lizmanoi and chutz lemekaimai both will create a paslos, but the kares will only be for chutz lizmanoi. Stop over here. We'll pick it up as Rav Papa will respond to Rava, a kash on Rava's drasha in the next year. B'siyata d'shmaya.